Welcome to another episode of Simple Thoughts. Today I'm going to be talking about live action adaptation of old cartoons and whatnot. And one thing I never understood about it was, why did we make them? Like, I just never understood the idea of the live action part. I just didn't get it. Like, animated movies were on the rise, they were doing pretty good. Like, look at the Disney Renaissance. A lot of those movies really did good, with families, with adults, and kids alike. So, I never understood the whole live action part. So, it just kind of confused me. Like, certain properties just, they didn't really lend themselves to live action. A lot of them were just too crazy, weird, and eccentric for it to, like, work in a live action setting. So I never got our reasoning for it to be live action. Like, say, with the Flintstones movies, I just never got that because the way the Flintstones work was that it takes place in the prehistoric era, surrounded by a bunch of dinosaurs and whatnot, and the way they use the dinosaurs is they work like, say, homemade appliances and whatnot. So it was weird that they decided, let's make it live action. It's like, why? Like, why did I need to see live action Barney, Fred, Wilma, and Betty? Like, I didn't need to see that. Like, no one really was asking for that to be in live action. So I never understood the whole grasps for that. It was just kind of the weird thing. Like, in the first film, it was done in with like practical effects and whatnot because, you know, CGI wasn't really perfected. So with all the effects they went with, they were a lot of animatronics for like the dinosaurs. So in a sense, it would kind of work because it's a bit impressive that it's like, you know, y'all had to build that. You guys had to build these actual dinosaurs and get them to move and all that. But at the same time, it's like, I don't feel like I'm watching a movie. I feel like I'm watching someone's vacation video at the Universal theme park. Like, that's what I feel like I'm watching. I don't feel like I'm watching a movie. So, that was kind of the weird thing. Like, you would step into the uncanny valley knowing that these animatronics are clearly fake. And then there's also the Viva Rock Vegas one where they actually implemented CGI and didn't help. It just looked fake. It looked even faker. Like, at least with the animatronics, it's like, I know I can touch that. With the CGI, you know you can't touch that. So, that was sort of the weird thing about it. Like, I just never got our big kick. And another example is, say, Smurfs. The whole thing, like, a weird thing we did was that we would make these movies that literally take place in, like, the real world. And it's like, why? What purpose does it serve for the Smurfs to be in New York? Like, there was no real reason for the Smurfs to be in New York. Like, there was, like, none whatsoever. Like, who was asking for that? Like, we wanted to be in the fantasy world of the Smurfs because the fantasy world was more interesting. You know, you had your dragons, your orcs, your warlocks, wizards, and witchcraft, magic, and whatnot. So there was more potential there. With New York, it's like, it's fucking New York. It's like, I could probably take a day trip up there, maybe, and see everything that I need to see. I don't need to see a movie about these magical creatures roaming around New York. It's like, that's not funny. That's not interesting. It's boring. So that was just kind of the weird thing about it. It's just, I just never understood our logic behind, like, live action adaptions in terms of, say, a lot of these kids' films. So, and another thing I know we're going into most recently now is all these Disney live action adaptions, and I don't get it because it's like, why do we need this? You know? There was nothing wrong or that much wrong with the original animated version, so why did we need a live action adaptation? Like, what was the purpose? Like, there was no reason for it. Like, say, with, most recently, Lion King, that's coming out. They're talking about live action Lion King. I'm like, there was no humans in the original Lion King. Like, none. So, where the hell are y'all going with this? I legitimately want to know, like, where are you guys going with this idea? Like, it's live action, but there's no humans. Like, that was the weird thing even about the Jungle Book movie. While I sort of enjoyed that movie, I can admit, it still was kind of weird. Because it didn't need to be live action. The boy, he was the only human character. There were no other humans in that movie. So for them to decide for it to be live action was just strange and a weird choice. Like, it would have worked better if it was just another animated version. Like, yeah, they told a different story from the original movie, but there was no reason for it to be live action. Like, this could have just taken place. This could have just been an animated movie that just told a different story. Like, I just never understood that. Granted, some people say, it's not a good adaptation. It's actually pretty poor because it doesn't follow the book properly. I never actually got to read the book, so I can't speak for that. But I know this one thing is it's just strange because we didn't need this to be in live action. Like, certain things just don't lend themselves to live action. So I just never understood that, especially with like a lot of these Disney adaptations. Like, there's now the new Aladdin live action movie, and I'm just like, I don't feel that's gonna work. Like, I'm just calling it now. I feel like that's just it's gonna suck. I feel like, because they are like, we have Will Smith as the genie. I'm like, Will Smith. Will Smith. That's your replacement for Robin Williams. Will Smith. Okay. Like, that's just not gonna work. Like, the original worked so well because he improvised. Robin Williams improvised a lot of his lines, so the animators were the ones who had to try to keep up with everything he's saying and make the animation match what he's doing. Here, it's just gonna feel like, yeah, Will Smith is more or less following the script. Like, if anything, like, Robin Williams, the thing about Aladdin was he cost them a best adapted screenplay, or best original screenplay nomination for an Oscar because he improvised so many lines. At that point, it's like, well, a lot of these lines weren't actually part of your screenplay. A lot of them were improvised, so we can't really count it as a proper screenplay. So with Will Smith, it's like, it's going to feel like you're following a clear path. That's just kind of the weird thing about it. Like, I just never understood it. Like, I just never understood, why did we need, why did we need these adaptions? A lot of them came out, and it just felt like, there was a better way of introducing these characters. Like, I get that sometimes they want to introduce these old characters to, like, new generations, but it's like, just reintroduce them. Like Tom and Jerry, they are like these animated comedy icons, and I grew up on them. And I didn't grow up on, like, say, Tom and Jerry Kids or any of the new stuff like the Tom and Jerry movie. I knew of the movie, and yeah, it sucked. But I knew of them because I watched the original shorts. That's all I needed. I didn't need you to, like, show me. I didn't need you to reimagine them in a totally more hip and modern setting. I just needed the old shorts. Just make those available to me, and that was fine. I watched Tom and Jerry religiously, and Looney Tunes too. That was one thing. So there was no reason to have to readapt them for a new generation, because it's like, all you need to do is just show them to the old generation, and that's it. I mean, sure, we got some reimaginings, like, say, with Looney Tunes, we got the Looney Tunes show, which was good. I'm not going to pretend like it was bad. It was a new adaptation, of course, but, their thing was we're just kind of domesticating them. Because the Looney Tunes, the way they work is, these are these great characters that can be put in whatever setting. You can put them in any setting you want to put them in, and they'll still work. And that's basically what made them great, is that they can be put anywhere. These are the type of characters that work anywhere. Smurfs or Flintstones, they don't. Like, when they decided to put Smurfs in New York, it made no sense. It just seemed pretty stupid. So there was just kind of no reason for us to get a live-action Smurfs movie where it takes place in New York. Like, the Smurfs just don't lend themselves to that type of comedy of any kind. Looney Tunes do. Domesticating them made sense. And sure, some people knock the show because, like, they made some changes here and there. But some of the changes were for the good. Like Lola, they changed her. Let's face it, in Space Jam, she was bland. She was bland as hell, and there was nothing really interesting about her except, oh, female bunny. It's like, okay, just a female bunny. I mean, we've seen female bunnies in Looney Tunes before. This is not new. So there was nothing to her. But here in the Looney Tunes show, they decided, no, we're going to make her like these crazy, quirky characters. She's kind of obsessive. She's kind of she's dim-witted. and it just kind of worked for that. You know, you actually got good jokes from her. She was actually enjoyable to be around. Granted, she was a bit much to be around, you know, for Bugs Bunny. But it still worked because that was a blank slate character. You can do different things with her. But with the Looney Tunes, their thing was just, no, it's just going to be these characters the way they normally are, but we're just putting them in a domesticated setting. And that works fine, you know, and that was a good way to try to reintroduce these characters to a new generation. It's these characters the way they normally are, and in a setting that some people can familiarize themselves with, and others probably just wouldn't, you know. But like I said, with Smurfs, it just didn't feel that way. It just made no sense that we did the going to New York thing. Just made none whatsoever. And I just never understood why we had to do a lot of live action adaptations. Like, say, Last Airbender. Like, there was no reason for it to be live action, and it was atrocious that they did it live action. You know, they got actors who clearly didn't know what the fuck they were doing or talking about. They didn't research Avatar. M. Night Shyamalan, he talked about how he liked the show, but I feel like he watched a few episodes and left it at that. Like, I just feel like, just watch the show, man. Like, just enjoy the show, and you don't need to do live action. It does, honestly, Last Airbender kind of doesn't really lend itself to live action. Like, Avatar is just one of those things that kind of needs to be done in a animated setting. That's just kind of it. If you give it a movie budget, that would have been the more impressive thing, you know? It could have been probably CGI, or you kept it 2D animated. Either way, would have been fine. So, for you guys to decide this live action shit, it's like, no, it doesn't work, you know? I don't feel like that character is just going to work. I just don't feel like these characters or these actors are going to portray the characters properly. Like, when I saw that character in the movie, I was like, that is not Aang. That's not Sokka. That's not Katara. They don't look anything like their animated counterparts. So that was the one thing I really hated about that movie. And that's just kind of the thing about live action adaptations. Like, even with Disney, even to this day, I'm just like, we don't need these live action adaptations. I don't get excited for them. Like, we got Beauty and the Beast, but it ended up being just a shot-by-shot remake of the original, with a few new things added that still didn't work, like this book that can teleport you anywhere but doesn't really get used or mentioned. So it's like, why the fuck did you have this? Like, that's just my thing. It's like, just leave the anime. Like one thing Disney did back in the day, or just a few years ago, I remember, was that they would re-release some of their old movies and put them in 3D. Granted, that was pointless because it's not like they were shot in 3D, so there was no point. But either way, you still got to witness it on the big screen. I still kick myself to this day because I'd never seen Lion King on the big screen. I've only seen it on home video. And I want to see that on the big screen, you know, because it's a movie that should be witnessed on the big screen because of how grand it feels, because of how they do their shots and everything. So, like, I want to see the wildebeest scene on the big screen. That really looks like something that would be a sight to see. But that's just something I sadly regret. Maybe they'll put it back in theaters, but my point is that they should just do that. Just put the old movies back in theaters. You know, re-image them up a little bit and leave it at that. Like, I don't think... I mean, parents are still going to want to go watch these movies because, you know, for nostalgia's sake. You know, because a lot of these movies were big enough and great enough to be in the big screen. I mean, I saw the Beauty and the Beast film on the big screen, and that was pretty nice. I mean, sure, they kind of screwed up because they decided, let's put Cars back on the big screen. Cars? Cars? It's fucking Cars, man. Like, maybe Incredibles. Like, that probably could work, but Cars? Like, a lot of it, like, it just made no sense. So that's why they kind of stopped for a bit. You know, they basically stopped bothering. But it's like, just go back to that, you know? But with the way these live action adaptations go, they're making money. People clearly like them, but a lot of the time they just make no sense. You know, it just feels like we don't need these things. Yeah, it's great that you want these characters to live on, but they don't need to be reimagined to live on. They just need to be reintroduced. That's all. You know, just take the old movies, put them back in theaters for a bit, and just do that. I don't think anybody would be mad. Sure, you can't keep doing that because eventually, you know, people are going to be like, okay, I'm not going to keep coming back and paying for this. I'd rather just pay for the DVDs and whatnot or the Blu-rays, which, I mean, they're doing that, of course. They have a lot of these old movies on Blu-ray. And, hell, you can even put some of these things on, like, Netflix or Hulu and Amazon. That'd be really good. I just never get the idea, or I just can't really get behind the idea of we need to reimagine it for a new generation. Because it's like, you just don't. You know? These are timeless characters that work no matter what you do. They'll work no matter no matter what you put them in. So, that's just kind of one thing I wish we would kind of understand, is that live action adaptations of cartoons, they don't need to be live action. We don't need to see these humans, you know? Like Transformers, that could just be animated. Hell, I would like it if they adapted, say, the War for Cybertron games. Just the first two, of course. Like, those would work fine. And they could just be animated. No humans at all. And that'd be great. So, I just wish we would get into this idea, or just understand that characters don't need to be reimagined. We don't need to see them in live action. We don't need to see them in fucking New York or any famous city of any kind. We just need to have them reintroduced. You know, you can make a new movie with these old characters. It's just, it doesn't need to be live action. It's better if it's animated, you know. That way people see the familiar face, and the new generation will see that and say, they'll look at the old media and say, oh, this actually existed beforehand, let me watch this, you know? I mean, sure, with Alvin and the Chipmunks, that might not be the case, because that cartoon does not hold up at all, but it still would be better for you, you know? You still got the whole movie, the Chipmunk Adventure, so it's just, you just do more animated adaptions rather than live action. Like, if you have to make a movie using these old characters, animation is the best way to go. In my mind, that is the best way. And you shouldn't be afraid of people that might not see it. People will always go to see it just for the nostalgia. You know, people love that nostalgic feel. So you don't need to worry that people won't see it. It will be seen by old fans, and even some new fans will want to check it out because they might be interested. And that's just kind of the thing I feel we need to go with in terms of live action adaptation. If you like this video, like, comment, make love to the subscribe button, tease that little bell, and help me on Patreon. Your contributions can be very helpful to this channel and can help us grow. And remember, it's just a thought.